your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us. A group of Edmonton doctors is calling on the Alberta government to reinstate COVID-19 testing, tracing, and isolation requirements. 10 physicians with the Edmonton Zone Medical Staff Association have signed an open letter that draws attention to threats posed by the Delta variant and the potential for pediatric and adult intensive care units to become overwhelmed. The association says Alberta is going against advice from Health Canada, the CDC, and the World Health Organization. The group is asking the province to review its data and provide some sound evidence. Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says those decisions to end those COVID requirements are based on science and data. Kenney spoke to reporters Tuesday for the first time since Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, announced those changes a week and a half ago.
Yes, I understand the concern, and no, it's not a direction I asked her to pursue. Obviously, there's been a lot of emotion in the COVID debate from the beginning, and that's entirely understandable. People have been understandably anxious about both the disease itself and the damaging effect of restrictions. With respect to the announcement made by Dr. Hinshaw last week, this is something that she and her team and the public health branch of the Department of Health, all of them professional members of the Permanent Public Service, developed over some time, presented it to our COVID Cabinet Committee, I believe on July the 8th, and we accepted without modification the proposal that came forward from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, which is based on science and data, particularly on the powerful science and data behind the protective effect of the vaccines, which has, as she says, dramatically changed the context of COVID-19.
Alberta's opposition, NDP, meanwhile, is calling for a public inquiry into Kenney and his government's handling of the COVID-19 crisis. And for her part, Dr. Dina Hinshaw is acknowledging her words have caused confusion, fear, and anger. In a column sent to various media outlets, Hinshaw says lifting isolation requirements, asymptomatic testing, and eliminating contact tracing will allow the province to focus on other health threats, such as opioid deaths and syphilis. Hinshaw says isolation measures were incredibly disruptive and are no longer necessary with vaccine protection. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu isn't holding back in a letter she sent to Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro. She says she agrees with the Canadian Pediatric Society's assessment that the province's plan to lift all of its COVID health restrictions is, quote, an unnecessary and risky gamble. Hajdu notes recent modeling predicts a serious surge in infections fueled by the Delta variant and says she wants to better understand the rationale and science behind Alberta's decision. Meanwhile, Brent Boyden, a spokesman for Tyler Shandro, says Dr. Hinshaw has been very clear on the sound medical reasoning behind her decisions to lift those latest health restrictions. The Alberta Institute is claiming victory after a petition that demanded the Alberta government release their inquiry into the province's response to the first wave of COVID in Alberta went viral. They say that after months of the province saying the report would be released, they announced Tuesday morning that they'd changed their minds and would be keeping the report a secret. According to the Institute, the petition received more than 2,000 signatures in a matter of hours, as well as media attention, which caused the province to change their minds once again. They say that Health Minister Tyler Shandro announced that the report will be released sometime this week. While in Calgary this week, Premier Jason Kenney provided an update to the film and television tax credit, which is part of Alberta's recovery plan. He says the credit is attracting major productions after the province lifted the $10 million per production budget cap.
Just this week, fans were introduced to the trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife, filmed just a few hours away in Nate's neck of the woods in Drumheller. And they told me when I was visiting there that they had 90% hotel occupancy, thanks in part to that production. In June, MGM started filming their new series called Billy the Kid in Calgary and around the province, as well as in Drum. In May, the 5th film installment of the Predator series, under the working title Skills, also began filming in Alberta. A reboot of Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock is shooting at the Calgary Film Centre. CBS chose Calgary to shoot its new series Guilty Party, starring Kate Beckinsale. And Paramount has also come to town to film Joe Pickett, a series based on the best-selling novels by C.J. Box.
We need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more. Welcome back. Conservative MP for Hastings, Lennox, and Addington, Ontario, Derek Sloan, made a stop in Clare's home, Alberta, recently. Sloan is on an Alberta-wide tour, telling Albertans that Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole thinks that he will get Alberta votes regardless of his actions.
So Aaron O'Toole does what he's doing. You guys vote 85% Conservative. They lose again, and then what happens? You know what Aaron O'Toole's going to do if you guys do that again? He's going to be like, see, I can do whatever I want, and Alberta still votes for me. Right? I can bring a carbon tax. I can do the Paris Agreement. I can say in the media, like he has, that I can afford to lose votes in Alberta. And they still vote for me.
Nearly 20 counties in southern Alberta have declared an agricultural disaster on their crops. Rocky View County is the latest Alberta municipality to make such a declaration due to severe drought. It joins Wheatland County and 16 others in southern Alberta, where some areas are experiencing 1 in 50-year drought conditions. Dan Reeve of Rocky View says meat and other food prices are probably going to increase for consumers because of the combination of low yields and high feed prices. Canada's major railways are now predicting an 8.6% drop in the volume of grain being shipped this year. The federal government has rejected a request from Alberta to change the criminal code to allow people to carry pepper spray for self-defense. Alberta Justice Minister Casey Madu posted an open letter last month to Federal Justice Minister David Lametti and Public Safety Minister Bill Blair appealing for the move. He had said Albertans need to be able to defend themselves against hate-motivated crimes. Lametti and Blair have responded in a joint statement dismissing the idea, saying, quote, all weapons that are prohibited for a reason. Now, here's an interesting story. Did you know that Canada is involved in the interception and seizure of drugs on the high seas? Well, between April and June of this year, deployed Canadian warship called the HMCS Calgary had huge success on a counter-terrorism mission in the Middle East. As part of Operation Artemis, the ship set 2 records, including the largest single heroin seizure in CMF history. And wouldn't you know it, an Albertan was one of the leads on the ship. Petty Officer Second Class Jason Boveneau of Pincher Creek was the team's second in charge, and our own Hal Roberts had the chance to speak with him.
Petty Officer Boveneau, thanks so much for joining us here today. How does your ship become involved in a counterterrorism mission named Operation Artemis?
Each year, Canada is involved in a number of missions throughout the world, and HMCS Calgary was lucky enough to be selected to come over for Op Artemis this year and represent Canada.
So how did the mission turn out for you and the crew of the HMCS Calgary?
The mission turned out to be a great success. We were working with Combined Maritime Forces and Combined Task Force 150 with a number of other nations where we would basically patrol the waters and disrupt and seize any illegal narcotics that happen to be transferring through the area that they use to fund criminal organizations and terrorist groups. There's inherent danger anytime Canada or any of the ships come out on a mission, but we did a tremendous amount of preparation and work training before we came out here. So the ship's company and my team, as well as our specialty team, were well prepared for coming out.
So what was the end goal for Operation Artemis?
The end goal for the mission is essentially to cut off the revenue stream for criminal organizations and terrorist groups in the region. They use illicit narcotics and weapons and other means to fund their activities in the area, and we come out to disrupt and seize those, so we cut off the revenue stream.
Now, do you work with other countries which are also involved in counterterrorism initiatives?
Combined Maritime Forces has 34 different nations that work with them throughout the year, and we actually did a lot of our replenishment with the Americans, as well as we did maneuvers with one of their early.
Have you ever been involved in a dangerous mission like this before?
I have been on a mission like this before. Most notably back in 2016, I was the chief posing mate on HMCS Whitehorse, where we did a similar drug interdiction mission down just off the coast of Central America. But this is my first time getting to come over to Operation Artemis, and it was extra special because I got to be the Alpha 2 for Calgary's organic boarding team.
So how long have you and the ship been deployed?
HMCS Calgary's been deployed since February of this year. We're going to be over here for roughly about 7 months, and we're due back sometime in September.
And if there's anything else you wanted to add?
Got a lot of family and friends back home in Lethbridge, but most notably, I'd like to say hi to Mom and Dad. Hi, Marty. Hi, Joyce.
That's wonderful. That was Petty Class Second Officer Jason Bovenue joining us aboard the HMCS Calgary.
Coming up, we speak with Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley about why an election could be called shortly and why he thinks Trudeau will need to be very strategic when campaigning in the West. Stay with us. Welcome back. Will there be a fourth wave of COVID, and is a federal election call just around the corner? Earlier this week, I chatted with our federal political contributor, Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, who believes the Trudeau government will need to rely heavily on the West to get a majority government. In the West, we often say the election is decided before the polls even close out here because of the size of Ontario and Quebec, naturally. So if we do have an election, do you expect that to happen again this time, Brian?
No, because I think there could be seats in play in Alberta. Right now, I think, isn't it every seat is held by the Conservatives or all but one?
Pretty much, yes.
And
yeah.
But, okay, what is going to happen with the Maverick Party? We know that Aaron O'Toole and his Aaron Bucks carbon tax program have alienated a lot of the Western voters with the Conservative Party. I've heard from people who have been stalwarts of the Conservative Party saying, I'm thinking of voting Maverick this time. So if that happens, does that peel away enough votes that the Conservatives lose? You know, if it happens in Calgary or Edmonton, that could definitely be the case. If it happens in Lethbridge, less so. I don't expect the People's Party of Canada to be much of a factor. They weren't in the last election, and nothing's changed to make it different. But Maverick could be a real game changer on the prairies in terms of votes. But as I mentioned earlier, British Columbia is going to be a three-way race. So they're all very tight by the polls that I'm reading, the polls that I trust. They're all very tight. Justin Trudeau, when he won his majority in 2015, took about half of BC's seats. He's going to have a great deal of difficulty doing that the way things sit now. He's got, I think, about 7 to 10 seats. He got 17 back in 2015. He needs those to get his majority because maybe pick up one in Calgary with a councillor for a guy that wanted to be on council running. Maybe if he convinces former Edmonton Mayor Don Iveson to run, maybe he picks up one there. But he's not really going to win there. He's not going to win in Saskatchewan. And his base, his support in Manitoba is tenuous. There are not enough seats, unless he sweeps Ontario, there are not enough seats in play for him to easily get that majority. So he needs to find seats in Western Canada. Western Canada will matter this election for both leading parties, not just the Conservatives.
Now, you said something interesting. You said that it could look very different this time. So if there is a fourth wave of COVID, Brian, do you think that we are going to see a return to lockdowns and those high death rates? Or you're thinking it's going to look different because of all the vaccinations? What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, even the third wave looked very different than the first and the second in terms of deaths. Yes, hospitalizations went up, including in Alberta, including Ontario, and many parts of the country. Hospitalizations went up, and there was a strain on the healthcare system. We're talking about more than 80% of the population age 12 and over having their first shot. We're closing in on more than 70% of the population age 12 and over having both shots. Yeah. Could it be higher? Sure. But there's always going to be some people who can't get the vaccine due to allergies, due to medical conditions.
Absolutely.
They may be immunocompromised, or they're against it and they don't want it. And you can't force people to undergo a medical treatment. That is not something that I think should stand in a free and democratic society. So We're over 80%. It'll keep creeping up a little bit at a time over the next few months. So that should be enough to say that even if cases rise, the deaths and the hospitalizations won't go in sync. In the United Kingdom, they have been seeing a rise in cases since May. They have not seen a corresponding rise in hospitalizations and deaths. They started going through their latest wave. I think it's their third. They didn't have a third wave at the same time we did. It came later. They started going through that with a much lower rate of protection from the vaccine, and it still worked very well. We're ahead of them. So yes, brace yourselves. You know, the Ontario chief medical officer said the other day, we need to normalize that some people are going to have COVID, and they're going to have to stay home because they're sick, just like other respiratory diseases.
Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today. Always appreciated.
Thank you.
Up next, there's a new podcast out there, and it's all about a certain type of animal, but it's not a dog or a kitty or horses. No, this is quite different, but it is a hot button topic, and it does affect how we eat. In fact, some people believe this animal is destroying the earth. Stay with us. That's coming up.
Cows aren't perfect, but they're not destroying the planet either.
Welcome back. Are cows destroying the earth? Well, some people have said so, but my next guest doesn't agree. In fact, she started a podcast about them. I spoke with Dr. Kim Stanford to get the scoop about cows on the planet. Yes, that is the name of her podcast. And with a name like that, well, we just had to find out more. Thanks so much for joining me today, Dr. Stanford.
Oh, happy to be here.
All right. Now, you're a PhD doing research at the University of Lethbridge, investigating cattle feed and other foodborne pathogens, but you've recently started up a new podcast all about cows, and it's got kind of a cute name. I know it made me smile, Cows on the Planet. I mean, how cute can you get there? Can you tell us a little bit more about this podcast and how you came about it and why you wanted to do it?
There's lots of things that people hear in the media, but a lot of it is just really very negative. I would say it's only hearing one side of the story. So what we're going in just as scientists and interviewing other scientists or other like experts in various subjects, and just trying to get them to give a more balanced perspective, get kind of all sides of the story out, because cows aren't perfect, but they're not destroying the planet either.
So what types of people listen to a podcast about cows?
Canadians would be about 80% of our listening audience, but then we have like people from all over the world, like in the Ukraine and in Australia, and there seems to be quite a big group of Brazilians that are interested in cows. So, there's from the USA too, some, but we're trying to just get this out to the general public. So, if anybody's interested, you can just you can get it off of Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. Just look for Cows on the Planet.
One of your recent podcasts was on the topic of feedlots. Can you maybe talk a little bit about this?
Sure. That was our first big podcast, and we were interviewing Dr. Karen Schwarzkopf-Genschwein from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada here in town. And the topic was, are feedlots cruel to cattle? She's a animal welfare researcher, and we wanted her take. The conclusion is it's all up to the management, that it's not that feedlots are inherently cruel, and it's just people have to be a good feedlot manager. They have to take care of the welfare of the animals, look out for their comfort, be rapid to treat diseases. Like they just have to be on top of things. But the same can be said for cattle in a pasture situation. That the same sort of need to be taking care of the cattle, treating diseases, and that can be sometimes more difficult because they can be like really spread out and difficult even to find when there's a problem.
Now, Kim, you mentioned something really interesting at the start of this, is that the reason you wanted to put it together was to kind of do away with that myth, so to speak, of that cows are really bad for the planet. So with that thought in mind, there is a lot of talk, of course, of creating synthetic meats and doing away with the cattle industry. But maybe tell us a little bit about the wide range of products that come from the cattle industry.
Probably 75 to 80% of the feed that cattle eat is nothing that people could survive eating. So cattle are taking a lot of waste products. There's byproducts that people don't want, or for whatever reason they're maybe not even sufficient quality. So cattle are great nutrient recyclers, and I don't think that is recognized enough. So if we didn't have cattle, there'd be a lot more waste that would just be sitting in a landfill.
Dr. Kim Stanford, thanks so much for sharing with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Lovely to talk with you.
Well, I don't know about you, but I like cows a lot better now. Coming up after the break, we bring you some of the top local stories from around southern Alberta. Stay with us.
Definition of a teacher: one who instructs by precept, example, or experience, one who guides the study of, one who imparts knowledge.
One woman is dead and another was charged with drunk driving following a vehicle-pedestrian collision on Monday morning. At 10:12 a.m. on August 2nd, Lethbridge police responded to the collision at the 1200 block of Mayor McGrath Drive South, where a southbound truck had struck a 54-year-old woman. The pedestrian was transported to the Chinook Regional Hospital, where she later succumbed to her injuries. 34-year-old Shannon Goodstriker of Lethbridge has been charged with dangerous driving and impaired driving causing death. Goodstriker's next court appearance is August 24th. A citizen walk to raise awareness for people living with a disability took place on Tuesday morning around Henderson Lake. As Carson Marzouk reports, the walk helped to kick off the 2021 Citizen Walkabout, which runs from now until September.
The 11th annual Citizen Walkabout is officially underway in Lethbridge. The walk is to help bring awareness to those living with a disability in the community. Executive Director with the Southern Alberta Individualized Planning Association, Mark Davids, says this year's walk is focused on highlighting different events that have led to those individuals being able to have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else.
A lot of people probably just assume, yeah, everyone has, access to the community. Everyone is able to just go to the grocery store. Everyone is able to just do this or that, but that's not necessarily true.
This year's goal is to walk 9,557 kilometers and raise $9,557, raising awareness of the disability rights movement.
As an individual with a disability, it's very important that we have our voice heard.
A lot of my friends did come out here and they're supporting me doing this.
The walk follows the lawsuit of a Calgary woman who sued the government of Alberta in 1995 after being sterilized while institutionalized at the Provincial Training Centre in Red Deer. The board used her low IQ score as significant ground for sterilization. Since her case, the province has apologized for sterilization of over 2,800 people. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marzouk.
Thank you, Carson. A Lethbridge woman recently co-authored a book detailing stories of educators within the school system. As Micah Quinn explains, she's excited to share the experiences of our school teachers and showcase them to the public.
Definition of a teacher: one who instructs by precept, example, or experience, one who guides the study of, one who imparts knowledge.
Lori McIntosh works as a full-time kindergarten teacher in Lethbridge at the Children of St. Martha Elementary School, and she co-authored the book, Teachers These Days, Stories and Strategies for Reconnection, with psychologist Dr. Jody Carrington. The book hit the #1 spot for bestsellers on Amazon.ca.
It's a book full of strategies, stories. We had stories submitted from over 300 educators across North America. And it's a place, kind of a safe place for people to land as we head back into the classrooms and we head back into those teaching situations, allowing people to really focus on the strategies they use to build connection.
McIntosh says the book took 2 years to finish, and the two authors worked together through an online format to complete the book.
We knew through this writing process that it was something special, being co-authored by a psychologist and a teacher. We knew it was special for the powerful stories. But it just goes to show that people are really flocking to the book and getting their copies as quickly as they can as they try and read it before they head back for a new year in September. But I really hope they see the value in the message and just feel affirmed and feel loved as they fall into our words.
McIntosh says she's hoping to sell the book at local bookstores once people come into the businesses and start requesting it. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. The Lethbridge Airport is set to receive some much-needed improvements in the form of customer experience. The City of Lethbridge received over $580,000 through an initiative from Western Economic Diversification Canada that will be given to the airport. There are plans to install a common-use terminal system, self-check-in, baggage system upgrade, powered mobile wheelchairs, and a visual passenger paging system.
This particular grant, what we were looking at was how can we improve the passenger experience that we can control, not necessarily the airlines, but what we can have in the terminal. So when we have a new baggage carousel system, which you see what we have right now, it looks like a chute that you're delivering bags of coal down. That's quite a step up. Wheelchair access for accessibility, paging systems for the hard of hearing people. Those are all nice little features that are great improvements for passenger experience.
This announcement comes after Lethbridge City Council invested over $2 million to secure $23 million in funding for the airport through the provincial and federal government. The new customer additions to the airport are expected to be completed by March of next year. Up next, Hal Roberts speaks with the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission. Keep it right here.